When we take a look at Call of Duty World War II, we end up seeing a progression of the content drop system that we've seen over the past few years. It's progressed and hopefully have gotten a little bit better compared to recent years. And the big one that always stands out to me is Black Ops 3, because though I love that game, the content system and how new weapons were dropped and supply drop system overall was absolutely abysmal. I think that no doubt World War II is way better than that one. It kind of built upon the idea of variants being obtainable via grinding from Infinite Warfare, but also taking a little bit of the collection idea from Modern Warfare Remastered, meshing that all into one, and then we have the system in place now. So no doubt in my mind, I think that this might be one of the best systems in place as of recently. I am not saying that it is a perfect system or anything like that, because honestly, I'd love for weapons to be given to everybody for free, just the way that it works out like that. But though that probably won't happen, we might see some sort of change and adjustment to how the situation and how they're handled within World War II being made, because as you guys may or may not know, right now we do have those daily orders for weapon variants such as the BAR, the M1928, the P08, the 1911, the combat shotgun, the Kar98K, and a few others like that. We end up having those ones, but they're very specific numbers and only variants. They're not actually new DLC weapons, and that's one thing that has caught the attention of quite a few people in the community. This is a great way to do this system for variants, but what about the new weapons that people don't have? For me, an example, I actually don't have either the Rex Revolver or the Enfield number 2. Those ones were released and available in collections, but to me, they just seemed way too pricey, and I didn't have the armory credits at the time. I didn't feel like buying supply drops, and there was no real way to actually grind them out via a, say, variants order or a special order to get those out of simply playing the game for an undisclosed amount of time. So therefore, those weapons right now are completely locked unless I end up getting a variant out of a supply drop randomly. Well, then I don't have access to either of those. So that's the unfortunate part with that one, but many people also feel that same way and share that sentiment in which they don't necessarily have these weapons because they don't have the opportunity to grind them out, and they're not really too fond of actually paying for supply drops, or they just don't have the ability to gather that many supply drops and save them all up, or if they do, their luck, like mine, may be abysmal. So here's where we start to gather into the idea that maybe we end up seeing something adjusted here, because we end up seeing a lot of people once again talking about this and how they wish there was a fix for it, to which this actually prompted one of the very few times I've seen Sledgehammer talk about the supply drop system overall over on Reddit, in which somebody ended up making a post defending them in which it said, you guys need to go easier on Sledgehammer. Now, for this, they ended up pretty much saying that there's no real reason to actually go in and start to name call developers, start to be excessively rude, because there's only so much they can do and they can't please everybody. As well, we've also had some things that of course were left out, like again, contracts for those revolvers that we ended up seeing out of the Resistance event, but then things like the Intra Burst and the newer weapons, those are all available organically at the moment too within collections. Some might be, yes, a little bit pricier than others, but also it's still early on, so you do have that time to grind it out for supply drops in the sense of actually organically earning those, and then presumably after the event, that's when we'll start to see some contracts go out for that. But this whole post, once again, just essentially defending them in the sense that being overtly harsh is not the way to get your feedback heard. Instead, that's actually a way that, from experience and having talked to some developers, that's a good way to get yourself muted or blocked on Twitter, to which your feedback will never be heard. So constructive criticism is the key here, and that was again the key point out of this, to which Sledgehammer ended up replying saying, hey, thanks first of all for the recognition and the words of support. We definitely appreciate it. Part of being a dev studio is being able to be self-critical and also take into account the feedback from your fans. It's a crucial part of the process. Flexibility is really important to all of us here at the studio, so we welcome the constructive feedback. We do agree that the words disgusting and pathetic are not really in the spirit of being constructive, but we understand players' frustrations. We really do. When you love the game, you want it to be the best that it can be, and we share that sentiment. So we want our game to be the best that it can be. So we get where people are coming from. We don't let it phase us, we know the community cares, and we care about you too. Smiley face. So here's now where it comes into a subjective role, where it's something that isn't explicitly stated, but it's something that may, in fact, result in a change here for how the contract system works, because this whole post was about how to get DLC weapons for free and how we can end up making those strides to maybe get there a little bit easier or accepting what we have at the very moment. And while I do agree that right now, I'm not a huge fan of the way that the weapon contracts have been working, since the update with the Division overhaul, we ended up seeing the GPMG for 1 week, then this previous weeks is the ice pick, and both of which I don't really care too much about. And maybe this is something in which we start to see a weekly progression going through all the weapons, because both those were from Winter Siege, so it very well may be possible that this is a chronological type thing. We're going to see new weapons progressively distributed via these contracts in a way that ends up showcasing them from the very beginning to the very end, and then maybe on a rotation afterwards, because we eventually will catch up to the weapons that we have on the market at the moment. But again, at the same point, I'm not a huge fan because it's a week of one that I don't care about, the ice pick, and then next week who knows what it will be. But with their constant reiteration of the fact that they care about the community and the fact that they really like the constructive criticism and they like to be able to take the feedback into account, we might see some sort of change here with how this system overall is in place. And yes, I know there is no official explicit implication here that they will be changing, and there's nothing that says, hey, thanks for the feedback, we're already working on something, check this out in X amount of time. That's not something that is said, but one thing that makes me very hopeful is that Sledgehammer in the past couple of months has been very receptive to community feedback. Obviously, we still of course have those hiccups like the Domination 75 score when everybody predominantly voted Domination 100. We ended up seeing hardcore Ricochet being rejected as of whatever data was taken into account outside of that survey that was on Twitter. But other than those two isolated incidents, we've seen massive progression in not only the way the community is having their feedback heard and answered, but we've had major changes to the game that a couple of months back, if you would have said that the entire fundamentals of the game were completely changed because of feedback the community was going to give, you'd probably call me crazy. And so therefore, we've seen some major strides in the progression of World War II as of recently, and honestly, I think that Aaron Halon is doing a great job at leading Sledgehammer ever since Condrey and Schofield ended up leaving, and so to that extent, I think that this gives us a reason to be hopeful. It gives us a reason to maybe expect to see more contracts for new weapons, maybe a faster rotation of weapons, maybe a new way that we can end up seeing weapon contracts being distributed as is, in which they don't necessarily take up one of your 3 contract slots or one of your 3 orders. Maybe we see some adjustments like that to which it makes it easier and specific just for those weapons that you're trying to get. I don't know, but I think that of course it is a very good possibility we see some sort of these changes being made because of the effort that Sledgehammer as of recent months has put into trying to make the game better for us, the players. And on top of how things could work out, like again, we just mentioned a couple of different scenarios in which this could work out very well. Either one, make a faster rotation of these weapons so that instead of a week, that you're not stuck with an ice pick for a week, something that you might not ever use. I know a lot of people don't really use the melees because if you're using for a practicality type thing, a pistol is more so useful in an engagement than that of an ice pick, but a faster rotation is definitely something that could be implemented. Then we could have, say, more special orders. We saw one for the Blitzkrieg bribe as of recently, but that was the first one that we saw in a while, actually. We didn't really see too much of anything, and before that, we ended up seeing that those were how the DLC weapons were distributed. You'd end up completing or finishing or whatever it may be that the challenge is for a certain amount of games or anything like that, and then you ended up getting those weapons for simply free just by grinding out the game. So maybe more special orders either on a faster rotation or something that we don't have a multi-week spread where there's nothing there. On top of that, maybe we end up getting more contracts allowing us to grind it out even more, so instead of just 1 weapon contract, maybe 3, maybe 4, or maybe a full page of weapon contracts. I think that'd be absolutely awesome. We end up seeing our rare and regular supply drops as well as XP and everything that we may end up seeing in that standard category of contracts that we know of now, but add another tab that will allow us to maybe pick and choose from 3 to 9 weapons that are available at a certain point in time, in which we end up being able to rotate those out every week or so, but you still have 9 to choose from at a given point. Another thing I absolutely love is the idea of making them prestige rewards. Maybe not for the standard 1 through 10, but after you reach Master Prestige, then you end up getting them for a certain amount of time that you put into the game. Because as it stands right now, Master Prestiges don't have all that much in terms of worthwhile rewards for still grinding out the game after you hit that max. From then to level 1000, there's really not all that much that you get on top of being that. So this would be an interesting little way to add that in. One thing that I saw was an interesting thread over on Reddit in which it said that we really don't use the general, so why don't we use him for something similar to that? Make him be a sort of hub for these prestige rewards, and then he serves more of a purpose than just interacting with them for 30 to 60 seconds. You can do that in which it's either Master Prestige ranks like we saw with Advanced Warfare, how you got an exclusive weapon variant for each prestige after reaching that max level, because they did the prestiges a little bit different. There wasn't level 1000, there were just additional extra prestiges. Or maybe make it so that after you hit max prestige, every 50 levels or so after that, you get a free DLC weapon token or something similar. So again, you could totally make this into something with so many awesome some possibilities. But the thing again that I take away is that Sledgehammer has been very receptive in recent months in particular. So maybe we end up seeing this, and I think if we make our voices heard enough, then we can end up seeing something being implemented into the game that allows us to do these sorts of things. So regardless of what the outcome is of this particular instance, whether or not this is, of course, the catalyst for what happens in moving forward if we do end up seeing adjustments to how we get DLC weapons, one thing that I take solace in is that Sledgehammer is aware of our concerns. They showed that by replying to this thread, by interacting with the community in that sense, and so they are aware of our concerns on how these weapons are actually earned. What's next? Well, I guess that's up for time to tell, and who knows, but the ball as it stands right now is in Sledgehammer's court, so here's the hope and they make a shot that's worthwhile. But that said, I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up here at this one, because I saw this, it was an interesting little thread that I caught a couple of days ago. As of you guys watching this is a little bit pre-recorded, but it was something that caught my attention, and I immediately was like, you know what, maybe this is a good sign, and maybe we have something to look forward to with this. But that said, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think here of this? Do you think that this could lead to a new revolution in how we end up unlocking DLC weapons? Do you think it's going to add in a new avenue, or do you think it'll do absolutely nothing at all, and it's just a little bit of a gesture to say, hey, we understand, but it's out of our hands, and it's something that maybe Sledgehammer doesn't have access to? Maybe that's a call that Activision needs to make and not Sledgehammer. So love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Anything, of course, is always welcome. There is no right or wrong answer in this sort of discussion video, but love to get your feedback. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, hopefully you found this insightful, and if you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding Call of Duty World War II, anything in particular regarding updates, news, information, best class setups, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here up on the channel, so if any of it interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. And if you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram as well, trying to get more active over there as well, so that link is also in the description if you want to toss a follow. But all that said and out of the way, hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.